So I spent some time learning to play lap steel in my 20s, and I never quite got that together, but I did learn some cool things about voicings, and in particular these Western swing chord voicings, these 3-note voicings. In this case in A. And they're super useful on their own, like just as if you're playing in A, just knowing where they are and what to do with them. But they also sound great if you're playing in E and you then use these A chord voicings for the 4 chord, because in particular you can go to something like a sound like that, which you hear all the time in Western swing, the sound of going from the 1 chord, like with a bright major third on top, to a 4 chord where there's a 7th on top, but it's this big colorful, it's really a kind of 9th chord if you look at all the notes that are kind of buried in the voicing. So let me just go through and show you the voicings on A. Obviously you can do them in any key, but we're going to talk about how to use them on A, and then how to use them in A, but as the 4 chord when you're in the key of E. So the idea is basically, you're gonna, if you can think of 3 triads going up the neck. Here's an A triad here with the root, 3rd, and 5th. Here's an A triad with the 3rd, 5th, and root, and here's an A triad with the 5th, root, and 3rd. So 3 A chord shapes. Now to each one of those, we're going to take the 5th and raise it a whole step so we have an A6 chord. So here we've got root, 3rd, and 6th. And here we're going to add in the 6th here so that we have the 3rd and the 6th and the root. And finally up here, here's the 5th. We're going to go up a whole step, and we've got the 6th and the root and the 3rd. So we've got 3 A6 chords. Now, if we just take each 6th chord and we slide it down a whole step, we get a 9th chord. It probably looks more familiar if you look at it up here. All right, we end up on the 7th and the 9th and the 5th, and here we end up on the 5th and the root and the flat 7. I had to think about that for a second. And up here, we end up on the 5th and the 7th and the 9th on top. I had to think about that one too. So, and so you can do them just as whole steps, or you can do them, since in each case, the chord you're going to, all the notes are 2 frets away, you can get there chromatically. And there's another really typical swing guitar lick here, where you're going from the 3rd up to the 5th. And then, so there's all kinds of ways you can combine these. I'm just doing them over a steady bass. And sometimes going from the 6th, you can, instead of going to this version of an A9 that we've just worked out, you can also go to this voicing, which is just like an A7, but with the 9th kind of snuck in there on the 3rd string. So the thing is really just to think melodically, like, what do you want? And then sometimes you would want to jump between voicings that have the 7th in them, and sometimes more between voicings that have the 6th. And then sometimes just going back and forth depending on what you want. So that makes a whole melodic vocabulary which you can use on A. And you can also, of course, mix up those chords if you were playing bluesier stuff. So that's one way to do it. It's just as a one chord sound when you're in A. But the other application is if you're in E. The other application for those voicings specifically in A that we just talked about is that if you're in E, then you can now use these A chords as voicings for the 4 chord, basically. So if you're playing blues in E, so you could also use them on the E. I kind of got ahead of myself. Let's stick to one thing at a time and I'll circle back around for that last part. But basically, if you're in E, you could be playing single note stuff, and then to sort of open things up, you could move to these chord voicings. And specifically the idea of spelling out like a real bright major third kind of thing on the E. So you get the contrast between the major third of the E and then the flat 7 of the A, which is, of course, the flat 7 of A7 is also the flat third of E. So you get this contrast between this and this. So you can use it for that, for the 4 chord, the key of E. And then finally, yeah, you can translate those voicings, transpose them to E, and use them on E as well, which means just working them out from the point of view of E being the root, which would be, here's your E6 down to E9, using, here's the 6th and root and third of E, down to the 5th, flat 7 and 9 of E, and then here's the root, third and 6th, down to the flat 7, 9 and 5th of E, and then up here, this won't work on a 12 fret guitar, I guess. But here's the 3rd, 6th, and root of E, down to the 9th, 5th, and flat 7 of E. And so on E, so now you've got those voicings, you can apply them on the 1 and the 4 chord in the key of E. So those are some Western swing chords you can apply to the blues. Try it out, see what you can figure out on your own in that context. Drop me a line down below if you've got any questions or comments. I would love to hear from you, and I'll see you next time.